Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here representing Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and today I want to chat with you guys and gals a little bit about back training. But a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you're not subscribed or following, please do so, and if you'll be kind enough to drop me a comment down below, I would appreciate it so much. All right, let's get over to the topic. Back training gets way overcomplicated by influencers, and ironically, I get lots of people who are like, "Wow, your background's in powerlifting, you have a really jacked back. What do you do for it?" And it's not complicated, and it's never been complicated. And I think people fail to understand it's not just using me as an example. You can go use plenty of historic examples. And again, we can step back away from maybe the era today where guys are using more and more drugs. But I mean, historically, what three movements have built the best backs, even in competitive bodybuilding? Okay, has it been a bunch of cables? And no, not necessarily. What do we see? Barbell rows, deadlifts, pull-ups. Right, that's your big three. And those three will build your entire back. And this is not a case of when people say, well, you need a bunch of planes and ankles, change your grips, that's it. Right? So before we even get into that, it's just like, I don't know, we'll change your grip every now and then on your pull-ups or your rows. That will give you all the variation you would possibly need. But if you think of some of the greatest backs, look at what they did. They didn't stand around building them on machines and cables and these movements that people do. They just didn't. They did the big movements, and that builds big, thick, massive backs. And the reason I list these three is because everything will be covered top to bottom, right? Everything will be fully developed. And particularly, like if rows are in there, rows actually can almost build everything because it's a balance. That's almost like your balance of everything. Whereas in the other two are a little more specific. So people will say, well, how do deadlifts work the back? Well, they work the erectors, they work the low back, they work the traps. If we went off of data that we have, they actually do work the lats. That's a controversial position, but it is an evidence-based position. Okay. Look at EMGs, deadlifts light up an EMG more than lat pull downs do in the lats. Even a lat pull down doesn't compete. But that makes sense because of the contracted position. But I think that's the take home that we need here when you get people who are like, oh, we need some contracted or shortened position stuff for the back. Well, the deadlifts cover that. Think about it. You're locked back in scapular retraction with a much heavier tension than you will ever put on that region than with any sort of squeeze or pull with anything else. So you have that covered. But absolutely the traps, the erectors top to bottom, right? They get covered with the deadlift, and your back will grow from it. If all you did was deadlift, your back would grow. All right, so pull-ups. Let's talk about pull-ups. Best lat exercise you can do. If you want a really wide V-taper, honestly, put your focus in pull-ups. Notice that I have one. And I had one when I did mostly rows, but I did some pull-ups off and on. But when I really focused on pull-ups, it got even wider. Up here in my mid to late 40s, it got even wider. My back was always thick from all the other stuff. But when I really started doing pull-ups all the time, especially that stretch at the bottom, it gets really wide, and it makes sense. So think about what's happening, with your lats. Okay, that pull, that stretch, right? You're going to build your lats, but it also builds other stuff. Okay, it will build the rear delts to some extent, the traps and mid traps, all of that. It will get built. All right, barbell rows. Right, this will work everything. This will also ensure that we finish that upper back. So if your upper back is kind of a weak link still, barbell rows will fix it. But again, we can change the focus on a row also. Obviously, an overhand grip is going to be more upper back. The wider the grip, the higher you bring it up the chest, the more upper back. But again, this is why you can do a little bit of variations. But just rowing in general will finish off the entire trap. It obviously works the lats, works the erectors. So it works all those other muscles. but it will make sure that the upper back gets complete. Right? You get real strong at rows, you're going to have traps. You're going to have rear delts. You're going to have rhomboids. You're going to get that thickness there. So think of rows and deadlifts as helping even more with thickness, whereas in getting wider from pull-ups, but they all contribute. Let's keep in mind there's just an emphasis there. So, but when you look at that and you look at all the muscles worked, and I would say to someone, what is being understimulated? If you did all of these and you get good at them, your back is going to grow. And it's going to grow dramatically faster than when people focus on these finesse movements for the back and you see too much of it. And that's the crazy part. You know, these people act like this is evidence-based. Like, I hate that term when to me, evidence-based means you have actual scientific studies to support you. They don't. What they mean by evidence-based is, well, I've looked at an anatomy chart and I believe this is what's happening. That's it. And notice most of the guys who promote all that stuff of, oh, let's pull with one arm, let's focus on the squeeze, let's line up the cable with the angle of the muscle fibers. How many of them actually have a back? Very few. Why? Because they're scared of work. That's usually using it as an excuse to say, hey, I'm a big floppy pussy who's lazy and scared to do a basic workout, so I'm going to come in and find something easier. And you see, this is why it's going to work. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. They'll never compare with someone who comes in and does heavy rows on their back development. It will not happen unless they outdrug them. That's the only way. Okay, so be aware that when people bring that up and they're like, but he's a science-based. No, he's not. He doesn't have actual studies showing more muscle growth from doing any of this. So keep that in mind. This is not even a case of, well, science says, no, it doesn't. Science says the deadlift is an absolute monster for your back. If you're going to go off of scientific evidence, they'd all be only what we have in studies. That's it. Only the evidence from studies. Dude, they'd all be promoting the deadlift. Right? So do we understand that? Hopefully we do. Hopefully you do now. All right? But these are the movements you need. You'll have a complete back top to bottom if you get good at these three things. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.